Hello and welcome to Mastering in the Box, and welcome to a new series called Mastering in Studio 1.5. This will be a new mini-series looking at the new plugin updates, and this week we're going to take a look at the Tricomp. Hello and welcome to Mastering in the Box. I am your host Smudge, and we are starting a new mini-series looking at the Studio 1.5 Professional and its mastering capabilities. Studio 1.5 has recently been released and the plugins have had a little bit of a makeover and got some cool new features, so we're going to introduce this series to take a look at what they have to offer. Now, whilst this series will be focusing on Studio 1.5, the plugins we'll be using are the stock plugins, so if you don't use Studio 1 and you still want to learn about Mastering in the Box, then there will still be a lot for you to take away from this mini-series, because we will be looking at some of the features that are available in most stock plugins. If you're interested in Mastering in the Box and you like this content, then please don't forget to click the subscribe button below, and if you want to receive notifications on all of our videos moving forward, then don't forget to click the bell and select all. So for the first video in this series, we're going to take a look at the Tricomp, which has become my new favourite plugin. Now, the Tricomp is a free-band multiband compressor with built-in saturation, and it's very easy to use, nicely set out, very simple interface. On the left hand side we have an input gain and a mix control. Then we have a low frequency and a high frequency control with a low and high control as well. Now, the low frequency sets the upper corner of the low band, so in this particular instance it shows 139 Hz, which means that the low band will be from 0 Hz to 139 Hz. The high frequency sets the low corner of the high frequency band, so in this particular instance the high frequency band will be 12K and above. The middle band is the difference between the two, so in this instance it would be 140 Hz to 11,999 Hz. The low control sets the amount of compression for the low frequency band. The high control sets the amount of compression for the high frequency band. There's an overall compression button with a reduction meter in the middle of the plugin. We have a knee control, an output gain control. We have attack settings. We have a release control and an auto release function. And my favourite part of the plugin, which is the saturation, which is part of the state space technology introduced by Presonus. So the other thing I really love about this plugin is it forces you to listen for the compression that's being applied. One of the things that I think that a more standard multiband compressor plugin, the way that they're set out, for me, they tend to aim my focus more at looking at how the compression is being applied to the track rather than listening to how the compression is being applied to the track. What do I mean? Well, if we take a look at the Multiband Dynamics stock plugin, you can see this is split out into 5 individual bands. What this layout for me tends to do is it tends to focus my attention on the screen, and I tend to look at what the compression is doing rather than listen what the compression is doing. When it comes to the Tricomp, we don't have that issue. The Tricomp in this particular instance is a very simple and easy to use, well laid out plugin, and it really forces you to listen for the compression rather than any visual references or any visual distractions. So before we get into the Tricomp and the way we're going to use this, I'm going to show you 3 examples of how we can use the Tricomp. But as you can see, I have applied just a little bit of processing to the track already. The track that I'm using for this example is the song Deeper Love by the artist Popos, and this is an extract from the full track. In this particular example, I've applied a little bit of a compression, which is just doing around about 1 to 1.5 dBs of gain reduction. The ratio is set at 1.5 to 1. The attack is at 2.86 milliseconds and the release is at 38.4 milliseconds. It's just literally compressing a very small amount. Next in the chain we have the Pro EQ. I'm just applying low cut, 20 Hz, and then we're looking at a low filter at 333 Hertz. It's literally just 1.5 dBs of gain reduction, quite a wide Q. And then one of the other things I really wanted to kind of emphasise is some of the vocals and get some of that more, some more body to the actual vocal itself. So we're looking at a boost of 1.31 dB at 4.81k. And last but not least, we have our trusty friend, the limiter, and this is the stock limiter. We're just applying 6.12 dB of gain. Once again, reduction is very minimal, and all this is doing is just boosting the level, just to get it more into the rough ballpark for streaming services. We're looking around about of an integrated level, around about -14. I think in this particular instance, if I let it play, we're looking at about -13.5. With the short term and the momentary LUFS figures hovering just over -13. So without further ado, let's take a look at the Tricomp. And as I said, I want to show you 3 examples of how to use the Tricomp in a mastering setting. So we're going to look at some low-end enhancement, some high-end enhancement, and some overall embellishment, and how we can use that to add some great control over the entire track. Okay, so for our first example, if we get the first instance of Tricomp up here, one of the things I really wanted to look at was the bass guitar. So in this particular track, there's good definition with the kick, but the bass guitar, whilst there's a lot of low end, there's a lot of low end rumble. It's not controlled, it's not tight, and it's very muddy. It doesn't balance well with the kick, and it doesn't balance well with the low end of the guitars. So what we're going to try and do is actually apply some low end compression to really control that bass guitar and give it some more definition. So what are we going to do to achieve that? I'm not going to apply any input gain, and we're going to leave the mix at 100%. But as I say, I've left the low band with the low frequency at 139 Hertz. And what this is effectively going to do is it's going to put the low band so it's starting to tighten up a little bit of the kick, but it's really going to tighten up that low end from the bass guitar. So the low setting we're leaving at 3, and the overall compression we're applying at 7.1. I've left the knee, release, and the attack at default. Saturation. Now this is fantastic, but it can be overkill. So the saturation control, I've applied 3.5%. The output gain, I've reduced to -3.06 dBs. So what that's going to do is effectively going to negate the additional gain we're applying to the overall plugin, and the mix at 100%. So it's bypassed at the moment. Let's play it, and let's listen to the Tricomp in action.
Come away with me, I'm the one on the run, gonna set me free. Break the chain from the pain, hope they let us be, 'cause we're the ones that are falling in love. Memories from the deep, baby, come on please. Pack your bags, let the spirit come and set us free. Run away, hit the train, jump and play with me. Just you and me, and we're falling in love.
So what this is it's doing, it's really taking away that low end rumble from that bass guitar. It's making the low end less muddy, more refined, having better control, and it's really bringing out the pick attack of the bass guitar, which I love. As I say, the saturation can be a little bit overwhelming. So in this particular instance, I've left it at 3.5%. If I boost the saturation, just want to show you what it's going to do to the overall sound. So even there up to 38%, it gets really crispy at the top end, which is not what I desired for this particular master. But as I say, we can apply that and actually mess around with that with the mix and the control, which I'll show you in a second. So that's just a nice, simple, easy way to get some low-end compression, which will just tame that low-end rumble from a bass guitar. So for our second example, what I really want to try and do in this particular instance is to really emphasize the vocal and bring out the vocal a little bit more. When you've got a song that's got quite a lot of low ends, so you've got a big round kick, you've got that bass guitar that's kind of pumping, you've got some distorted guitars with a relative amount of low end guitars, sometimes that the vocal can almost get buried a little bit. The other thing of working with vocals is the vocals are likely to be the most dynamic instrument that we have to contend with when it comes to working in the audio production environment. So what we can actually do is use the Tricomp to even out the vocal a little bit more. We don't want to make it undynamic, we still want to retain the dynamics in the vocal itself, but what we can do is just even the sound a bit better to give the perception of a louder vocal. So how can we do that? Well, let's take a look at the second instance of Tricomp here. So in this particular instance, we're doing no additional to the low end, but what we've actually done is we've increased the high end. We're using the high control at 1.7. We're reducing the high frequency down to 5.55k. So in this particular example, we are using this more like a de-esser type plugin just to even up the top end. The compression I've set to 7.3, the knee once again at default, the attack at default, the release at 180 milliseconds. This is where we can start to play a bit more with the saturation as well, because we can boost the saturation a little bit more to try and get some more high-end definition. But with this particular saturation, as I say, it can be a little bit overruly. So what I've done here is I've boosted the saturation, but actually reduced the mix down to 36.5%, so it is more subtle in its nature. And I've reduced the gain down to 1.98 dB to balance. So let's take a look at this in action.
Come away with me. I'm the one on the run, gonna set me free. Break the chain from the pain, hope they let us be, 'cause we're the ones that are falling in love. Memories from the deep, baby, come on please. Pack your bags, let the spirit come and set us free. Just run away, hit the train, jump and play with me. Just you and me, and we're falling in love.
So what this is doing is actually giving some more life to the top end. It's actually just giving some more excitement and some more energy to the vocal. It's evening out the sound of the top end a bit better, and it's just making it just more energetic and more interesting. Just before we move on though, let's take a listen to the track once more, but let's try and increase the mix control just so you can get a better idea of what the saturation's doing and how we can blend it with the mix control.
Come away with me, I'm the one on the run, gonna set me free. Break the chain from the pain, hope they let us be, 'cause we're the ones that are falling in love. Memories from the deep, baby, come on please. Pack your bags, let the spirit come and set us free. Just run away, hit the train, jump and play with me. Just you and me, and we're falling in love.
So you can really blend this to taste. If you want to add that little more saturation in there just to really enhance the top end further, you can do that easily with the mix knob. Boost the saturation, back down the mix control, and as I say, blend it to taste to get your desired sound. Okay, so for our third and final example, let's take a look at how we can add some overall embellishment to the track. We can look at how we can apply some separate amounts of compression to the low end, to the high end, some overall compression, what we can do with the saturation. Let's take a look and see what we can do overall. So in this third and final example, we're just going to use it more just for some overall flavour and how we can just apply some gentle amounts of compression to the different bands just to enhance the overall sound. With this particular example, I'm not once again putting anything in the input gain. The mix is backed off to 52.5%, but we'll discuss why in a second. The low frequency is set to 301 Hz with the low at 2.3. The high frequency at 5.97k with the high at 1.5, compressor 6.4. I've increased the knee slightly to 4.41. I've put the attack on fast, the release at 187.4 milliseconds. Backed off the gain, the output gain to minus 2.34 dBs to balance, and we're applying 11% saturation. This is the reason why we're backing off the mix control, just to blend to taste. So if we bypass the plugin first, let's take a listen and then we'll analyse what it's doing.
Come away with me, I'm the one on the run, gonna set me free. Break the chain from the pain, hope they let us be, 'cause we're the ones that are falling in love. Memories from the deep, baby, come on please. Pack your bags, let the spirit come and set us free. Just run away, hit the train, jump and play with me. Just you and me, and we're falling in love. Here I am, take my hand.
So once again, in this particular example, it's just rounding out the low end. It's taking away some of that rumble, The lower frequency is a little bit wider than we used previously, and it's just really tightening everything up, making everything more in control and giving the overall track some more body. It's boosting the high end, so effectively the way it's compressing is it's evening the dynamics at the top to give it more of a perceived overall loudness, just enhancing that high end slightly. And so with the saturation there, it's just applying a little amount of saturation, 11%, and we've backed off the mix to taste. So let's take another listen to the track once again, just using the same settings. Let's boost the mix control just to see what it's doing at a higher mix level, and we'll take another look from there. So there we have it. It's just making the song a little bit more open. It's rounding out the low end. It's adding that little bit more energy and excitement at the top end. It's making the song sound more open, allowing the song to breathe, and it's just gentle compression, just to really enhance the song a little bit further. So my overall thoughts: this is a wonderful plugin. It's so versatile. It's great for mixing, it's great for mastering. You can use it to tighten up the low end, you can use it to add some energy to the high end, you can use it as gentle, subtle compression, and give you varying different flavours throughout the three bands. It's just such a great versatile plugin. Saturation is wonderful. The mix knob or the mix control, use it to taste. You can do so much with this plugin, and the thing I really like about it, as I say, it really focuses my attention on listening how the compression's being applied rather than looking at the visuals from the screen. So I hope this has given you some ideas on how you can use the Tricomp with your masters. As I say, if you've got Studio 1.5, definitely check it out and give it a go, because it is such a great plugin. And let me know if you have some success, if you're using this in your masters and let's say you're getting some great results. So let me know in the comments down below, because I'll be really keen to understand how you're using it and what type of results you're getting. If you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to hit the subscribe button below, and also click the bell and select all so you're notified when we release our future videos moving forward. I hope this gets some inspiration out of this and gives some good ideas for your mastering, and all that's left for me to say is I hope you keep safe and well, and I'll see you in the next video.